All right, we're going to go ahead and get started just so that we can make the most of the time we have. So this is the final thing, and I put it at the end on purpose. You've kind of noticed everybody said, everybody's really friendly and very open and stuff. The student panel is like, I titled it on the agenda, right? It's really like that. This is sort of, if you didn't believe the professors, if you didn't believe me, if you didn't believe the staff, if you don't believe all the other people you've heard from, you can believe these folks. Because I picked them up, we were talking about earlier, like, oh, what do you want us to say? I don't censor them. I don't tell them, like, oh, just say the good stuff or send them away. I want you to ask the questions that you would ask in private or whatever. They can say whatever they're going to say. If they lie to you, I will correct them. But if they tell you the truth and it's not flattering, that's the way it is, because I want you guys to have the right information and stuff. So don't feel like we're going to give you some sort of whitewashed Chamber of Commerce version of things. So we're also recording this again too. So I'm going to do the whole talk show thing and run around with the mic again. Ladies, we have a first year, a second year, and a third year, so we've got like a wealth of experience. I'll start with Chris on the end to give the 1L time to think. And so just tell us who you are, where you went to undergrad, where you're from, and some of the things that you do here at the law school, like the activities you're involved in.
For 3 years before I came to law school. I am the Organizational Development Chair for the Administrative Law Journal, which you guys will learn all about journals here at the law school. I am a Dean's Ambassador, and I play on the women's lacrosse team. And that's
here? You play lacrosse here?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. See, there are some athletes here in the law school.
I'm also on the law school's most awesome basketball team for intramurals, but I don't know if that was relevant information, but it's important to me.
I'm Allie Presnell. I am a 2L. I am from Tomball, Texas. I went to Baylor, and I'm on Law Review. I'm in Phi Delta Phi. I'm a 1L tutor, and I am a Theta alumni member.
So as a 1L tutor, explain that a little bit.
I tutored last semester and this semester. All your 1L classes will have tutors. You meet once a week, and they hold office hours. They go over what you do during the class, and you can ask any questions. They help prepare you for your exam. Last semester, I tutored torts, and this semester, I am tutoring con law.
Cool, thanks. Shirley?
My name is Jerry Lee McDowell. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas. I did my undergrad at Tulane in New Orleans. Like Chris, I worked for 3 years before I came to law school. I worked for the Office of the Attorney General as a child support negotiator, so I actually negotiated child support orders. Here at the law school, I write for Texas Bank Lawyer, and I just got made the 2L editor for Texas Bank Lawyer. I'm the president of the Business and Bankruptcy Law Association. I volunteer for VITA, which is Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. And I'm in Phi Delta Phi.
Cool. Very nice. All right, folks. It's your turn. Ask them questions. Hit them. Do it. Yeah. Oh, wait. I've got the microphone. I'm over here all cool. Like I don't have anything to do.
This is for Chris and Janelle. How do you guys like Phi Delta Phi being part of that?
And Phi Delta Phi is like a legal fraternity, kind of like some of y'all were from maybe Phi Alpha Delta and undergrad, kind of the same thing, but I'm sure there's beef, like West Side Story kind of stuff between them. But explain what you guys do.
Phi Delta Phi, at the end of any semester, if you're in top 20%, you'll get invited to be in Phi Delta Phi, and it's a good organization to put on your resume because then employers automatically think you're smart. And you can't ever get kicked out, so even if you drop out of top 20%, then you're still allowed to be in it. So it's really good for your resume.
All I have to add to that is they have an outline bank, so that's awesome.
And they're the smarty pants outlines, right? Outline bank, so at the end of the class, or not the very end, but as you've probably heard people make their briefs, all their cases, prepare for class, and you're doing all this stuff. As you get towards the end, closer to finals, you start sort of synthesizing it and coalescing all that stuff into an outline for the class to help you study and that kind of thing. And so it's helpful sometimes to see other people's outlines to kind of make sure you've got enough, or see if there's any holes and that kind of stuff. They're not a substitute, because the point of an outline really isn't to study with. It's making the outline is how the learning happens. So if you just like take somebody else's outline and read it over and over, the learning's not going to happen. But that's what that is. So where was that?
If there's one thing you change about your law school experience, what would it be?
Oh, Chris, as a third year, the senior stateswoman on the panel. Have you thought about that at all?
I actually don't think I would do anything differently. What I would recommend to you to do, though, is work really hard 1L year. It's really, really important. Like, I can't emphasize that enough, because it sets you up for the rest of your law school path. And also, make sure to put yourself out there and ask for opportunities that you don't think you may necessarily be entitled to or even qualify for, because really the worst thing anybody can ever tell you is no.
Yeah. And Jerry Lee, as a 1L, sort of in the halfway through, kind of almost at the end of your first year, is there anything that, I don't know, you wish you'd done different at the beginning, or that you had known before you started?
I think the only thing I wish I would have done differently is start your outlines early. Everyone says that, but no one actually does it. And that last month of law school, when you're trying to brief for class and write your outlines and study, really sucks. So start early.
One of these days I'll learn to just stand in the middle.
Okay, so these are for everyone. I have two questions. Just get them out of the way. One, where do you live, and what area do the law school students, tend to live in? And secondly, what was your biggest fear coming into tech law, and how has that panned out through the course of your career here?
Oh, good one. So we don't need apartment numbers or anything. Just,
I live at 4th and Frankfurt. It's about 10 minutes away. I lived by myself last year. I lived at the cottages, and I lived with undergrads, which was fine, except that area is very loud and busy, and so I wanted to get away from that. So
and the cottages, are those the ones on, down Broadway over here? Okay, in that
They're
sort
like
of
little
part.
houses. They were really cute, which is why I wanted to live there, but it's not worth the, craziness and the busyness that's in that part of town.
And when you say with undergrads, among undergrads, or did you have undergrad roommates?
I had undergrad roommates.
Brave woman. Had past tense?
Yes, I live by myself now. I was spoiled in undergrad. I lived with my best friend, so I don't want to live with other people now.
I live at 18th and Quaker at Jackson Square. I would recommend that you live someplace close to law school, especially your first year. If you take your first year seriously, you will be up here pretty late a lot of nights. And so I think it would be personally hard to drive 15 or 20 minutes. But I also came from New York and DC, where I'm used to walking every place. But I would say live close, and probably not with undergrad roommates.
So I live at Slide and 8th, which is about 10 minutes away. It's pretty close. I actually live with 2 3Ls. We have a house, so that's really nice in that it's beautiful to have a house. You don't have to worry about apartment. Bills are a lot cheaper if you split them with people. But I will warn you against having roommates. Like they said, you're going to be at the law school at all hours, and when you come home and there's a party going on in your house, it's really annoying. So maybe think about living alone if you're going to be up here all the time.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things when you have roommates. In undergrad, there's the same kind of things, but you want to find somebody that has the same sort of cleanliness standards as you have and the same kind of study habits and that kind of stuff. So those rules all apply. It's just that when you're in law school, you're so stressed out that smaller things are more bigger annoyances to you, and you're less willing to tolerate that kind of stuff. And I think what a lot of students do often is either if they know law students that are already here, they might room with them. But a lot of students, I think, live by themselves that first year, and then they meet people and that kind of stuff, and then you kind of get a sense of who's sort of simpatico with the way you live, and then they find roommates for the second and third year. Because we were talking about money yesterday, right? I mean, you save a lot of money, with roommates and stuff. And sometimes it can be nice to have somebody to come home with, like Jerry Lee, I mean, having the upperclassmen there, was that like, I mean, they were third years, so maybe that's why they were partying when you got there. But, I mean, was that, because you all didn't doing the same thing, was that like a good thing that you had somebody to vent with, or was it bad because it was like all law school all the time?
No, it was really nice in that I did have people to kind of have my back. Like, both my roommates are very sweet. Don't get me wrong, I love them. They're just 3Ls, and so they don't have as much on their plate, and so they're able to party a little more. But they were really nice about, I came in and Mallory, one of my roommates, had a little care package for me my first day I showed up at the house, which was all her old supplements, and like Kelsey's given me outlines. So there are benefits to knowing 3Ls and kind of living with people.
I've been to a party at your house. I'm sorry.
But Jerry brings up another really good point about, I think one of the strongest points about tech is that there is a lot of mixing between 1Ls, 2Ls, and 3Ls. And have you talked to them about the Mentors program?
No.
Okay, so there's a Mentors program here at Tech. You don't have to sign up for it, but I highly recommend that you do sign up for it, because what it is, it's a 2L or a 3L who has voluntarily agreed to be your mentor, so nobody's forced to do it, so they want to do it. And basically, they help you with anything that you need through law school. My first year, I met my mentor. Like, he immediately emailed me the first week of law school. He graduated last year. We're still really good friends. My first year, like, he gave me so much, not just like law school relevant advice, but life relevant advice to surviving law school. And it was also really interesting because he and I just came from such different backgrounds that I don't know that I would have met him outside of this context, but I think the fact that we were so different was actually really strong to our relationship. He's graduated. I still talk to him. He gave me outlines. He gave me advice. He told me which professors maybe are not the ones that he would advise I take. Stuff like that. So make really good friends with upper, like 2Ls and 3Ls.
And you'll get emails about that, like, a lot closer to school. I mean, kind of usually right before the start of the semester. So.
And if you don't like your mentor, you can, like, usurp a friend's mentor. I mean, it's totally fine.
We gladly adopt
Yeah.
other people. Your second question was, what was your biggest fear? I think my biggest fear, I was a teacher, so I don't mind talking in front of fifth graders, but talking in front of my peers was like a huge source of fear for me. And you don't really get the option of not talking in class, and you get more used to it as it goes on. And I would highly recommend doing like Bob competitions to get more used to it. There's some classes that I still hate talking in, like commercial law at 8 in the mornings. I hate talking in that class because I don't know what's going on. But you kind of get over it. You get more used to talking. You get more comfortable with the people that you're around.
I would say my biggest fear coming in was maybe not being good enough, which I know is ridiculous. We all got into law school, but there's just that fear because you only have the final grade and you spend all semester listening to these people talk in class and you're like, wow, they're really smart. Crap, hopefully I do well. But it pans out. Just put in the time and you'll see the reward, and just know you all made it here, so you're good enough.
My biggest concern was the same as Jerry's. I worked for 3 years, and I worked in Excel all day, every day. I didn't like talk to people or write anything. So I was like, maybe I forgot how to be a student. But if you have to put the time in. Like there's no shortcut around it.
Other questions? Yep. That's okay. Did I just hey, honey.
This is a question for all three of y'all. How do you balance personal life with law school life?
They're all looking at each other like, personal life? Question mark?
I guess I'll start. I had it a little bit easier in that my significant other still lives in Fort Worth, which sounds like it sucked, but it's actually quite beautiful because I see him once a month usually, and when he's down, it's just our time, and the rest of the time is school time. So just know you're not going to have much of a personal life and plan accordingly.
I would say that being balanced is one of the most important things to get used to. So anything that you would regularly do, continue doing that. Like, I work out a lot. I go to church every Sunday. My significant other now lives in Dallas, and I hate it. I would just agree that I think that traveling back and forth is a huge time commitment that does take away from school at sometimes. But being able to manage your time and schedule every single thing that you do, it sounds tedious, but it will really help you. So one of my friends in law school, she's my workout partner, and we have our whole week mapped out with like our classes that we go to at the rec. And we schedule an hour every single day, and that's what we do. So whatever you would normally do, continue doing it, but you have to learn to build it into your schedule.
Yes, I agree with both of what they've said. If you don't use an agenda or something to write down what you do or need to do, you should probably start that, whether it's electronic or paper. For me, it's paper. I was an athlete in undergrad, so it was easier for me to adjust to law school, but it's the same type of thing in the sense that if you schedule from 8 to 9 to do something, you need to do it from 8 to 9. There's no excuses, and you can't say, oh, I'll do it later, because it won't get done, especially 1L year. So I also say, though, like, I'm a big runner, and I like to play lacrosse, so I knew every day from 5 to 6:30, like, I wanted to be at lacrosse practice and not in the library. So what did I need to do to be able to have that hour and a half free? You just have to make a schedule, and you have to stick to it. And if you don't, you're going to be really behind at the end of the semester, especially.
Yeah, time management is huge. I don't know if those of you that have gone to other, accepted Students' Day, weekend things at other schools, my guess is you heard the same thing, because everybody does a student panel, everybody. And it's just, you can't underestimate it. Because I think, and this is law school in general, and life, if maybe there's 5 things you want to do, but you can only do 3 of them. So you need to pick which 3, and then you plan out. It doesn't mean you can't do them, but you just got to, plan it out. Because, in undergrad, I think, unless there's some of you who are like insanely busy in undergrad and might have a little taste of what it's like, but most of us, we had a lot of free time in undergrad, and we don't really know, we may not appreciate how much free time we had until you get to law school and you realize, oh no, actually, I literally have 5 minutes to eat between this and this because I have to go home, like that kind of stuff. So if you're not prepared for that, it can be this like jarring kind of experience or whatever. But like they said, if you don't, all it takes is a schedule, right? You schedule it, then you will have that time for yourself, whether it's to run. Notice they didn't just say scheduling study and that kind of stuff. You make sure you have that time for yourself to, I'm going to go to the movies once a week or whatever, and I'm going to have a workout buddy. We're going to be accountable. We're going to go do that thing together. You can do it. You just have to make sure you make the time, because if you don't, stuff's just going to start piling up. I mean, some of you guys, every law student experiences this, where you kind of like, you have a cheat day and you're like, you know what, I'm not going to read for that today. Or, there's a concert in Dallas, like, I'm going to go to that instead. I'll catch up next week. And then it's like 3 weeks before you actually start to catch up, and those next 2 or 3 weeks are hell because you're trying to like catch up. Versus the students that say, I want to go to this concert in Dallas, in March, I'm going to read ahead. Like, I'm just going to add a little bit so that I can do that and not be sort of stressed out the whole time that I'm not going to be able to catch up and stuff. So time management is really, really big. I'm just kidding.
Okay, I'm going to ask the question of what do you wish you knew before you got into your first year?
The hardest part for me coming to law school, I was a teacher, I was an education major, I'm used to like happy, I'm a cheerful person, I'm used to like colorful and friendly, and going to a more neutral environment was probably the hardest thing for me. So I wish I had known like to be expecting that coming in.
I don't remember. I put a lot in my brain since then. But I wish I knew. I don't know. Sorry, that's not a good answer. I don't know. But I don't know.
Probably coming in, I guess I would have wished I knew that the professors are a really good resource. So I didn't start going to see the professors until most of the way into the fall semester, and I was just amazed at how friendly they are and how willing they are to guide you. I actually had a professor who was very instrumental in getting me my summer position. So just know that the professors are there for you, and they're not these scary people. They may be scary in class, but they're really nice in their office, and use them. Use their resources. Use their knowledge.
To add on to that, most of the professors here are completely willing to talk to you about anything. So I sat down with a professor for 2 hours and talked about what I was going to do with my life. So it's not limited to only what you're talking about in class. You can talk to anyone about anything.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. I mean, the professors, part of what I said yesterday with the faculty panel is that they're human beings with lives and stories, and they've done things before. They weren't born law professors. And, that's all they've ever done. They've been around. They've had different jobs. They know people in different industries. They went to law school, too, and they had, different experiences and that kind of stuff. And when you get older, you want to use that, old folks, not like me old, but like really old, like Professor Watts. Use that experience to your advantage, right, and bounce ideas off of people that have seen, especially some of the older professors that were graduating from law school like in the 80s. They had a horrible outlook in their employment too, back in the 80s. It was horrible. It's worse now because there's like 30 more law schools. But they have this perspective on things that, right, even though it's bad now, it's going to get better. And they can kind of maybe, calm you down or tell you this is how you sort of weather it and get through it and stuff, because it's not going to be horrible forever. So great resource. I second that one. Yep.
My question is for everyone. It's kind of a two-part question. The first is, did you know for sure that you wanted to come to tech before you did? And if you didn't know, or it wasn't your first choice, how has your experience here changed that?
I actually, full disclosure, had no intention of coming to tech. And I was here. Full disclosure, I was dead set on going to OU. And I was here with a friend of mine who had graduated from Tech undergrad and had done her MBA here at Tech. We were back for a football game, and after a couple Chimmy's margaritas, which you all will find out what they are, she was like, we should go look at the Tech Law School. And I was like, no, I'm going to OU. Absolutely not. And it was also like a Friday afternoon, and we'd had like 3 margaritas. And she was like, no, we're going. We didn't drive ourselves. We took a cab. But we went over to the law school, and I went into the admissions office, and I had no appointment. I was maybe not sober. And the admissions people were so nice. Like, they were absolutely incredibly nice. And randomly, I don't know if you guys have been introduced to Professor Shannon, but he was in the admissions office, and they were, like, walking me around. Like, they were so nice and welcoming, and they were walking me around, and I was like, okay, I'll apply to tech. And then, yeah, that's literally how I consulted with a family friend of ours who's an attorney, because they always say, like, oh, you should go to the best law school that you can get into. And he actually got into Harvard and Michigan, and he went to Michigan because he was like, I went to Harvard, and it looked absolutely miserable, and everybody there looked miserable. And I just decided I couldn't go to school with miserable people for 3 years. And he didn't go to Harvard, he ended up going to Michigan. So it was the same thing here. Like, yes, while that may be important, like, at the same time, you also have to consider, are you really going to be happy there? And then I went to Norman, Oklahoma, and I was like, what have I done? So I didn't intend to come here. It's worked out really well. I can say that the faculty here are incredible. I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm a research assistant for and Professor Henry, who's like the world's leading bankruptcy authority, and she knows like everybody in any part of bankruptcy, and she's litigated like the Lehman bankruptcy and stuff. So they're really par none, and it's worked out well.
So in vino veritas, right?
That's right.
Like you that opened your eyes and you came over. And I've known you for 3 years, never heard that story.
You said that I could say whatever I wanted.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying. In 3 years, I've never heard that story, and I was probably one of the ones that was there when you got there.
You probably were. I probably don't remember because I had 3 margaritas. But in full disclosure,
Confessions,
this is the only
I like
law
it.
school that I applied to, just through various circumstances. So I was in or out.
Tech was also not my first choice. I was pretty set on Baylor, but I was also considering UT. I got into both of them, and I always heard, go to the best law school you can get into. And so I was really excited to get into UT, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go there or Baylor. That's what's being done. And then Dean Perez started emailing me, and I called for a question, and he just was always there and always willing to talk to you and talk me down from my panic about choosing the right law school. So that was really nice, especially when I went to visit Baylor and they were kind of cold and didn't really care. Then there was also the value consideration. So if I went to Baylor or if I went to UT, I was going to have to take out a lot of loans. And I'm already sitting with a lot of undergrad debt. And I just started doing the calculations of how much my loan payments were going to be when I got out of law school. And I was floored, and it was really scary. And especially in today's job market, there's not always a guarantee you'll get a job. And tech, on the other hand, is extremely economical. And then Dean, the economical and Dean Perez just going above and beyond. And then when I came to visit, the professors were willing to sit and talk to me after class and these are law professors. I'm not even guaranteed going here. And they were just willing to talk me down from my fears and give me advice. And that's really what drew me here. And I love it. I am so glad I didn't go anywhere else.
I have 2 questions. First, what did you want to do in the legal community when you came in? So big law, smaller firm, business, something like that. And then second, Chris, you mentioned that your mentor had told you what professors to avoid. Can you share that information with for the rest of us?
Sure. What were we interested in when we first came in? So like I mentioned, I had a banking background, corporate banking background when I first came in. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I actually came to tech because I had an idea that I wanted to do something in likely bankruptcy and something having to do with oil and gas. And so I knew also coming in that I used to work, full disclosure, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch. I knew coming in that I never wanted to work for any firm, whether it be in banking or law or anything that was that big. Again, the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. And so I came in being like, I would like a pretty big firm, but not like one of the mega firms. And I'm going to a pretty big firm next year to do oil and gas work and bankruptcy litigation.
I did not know what I wanted to do, except that being a teacher, I knew I wanted to make more than $5 a year, and so I was willing to do anything that would get me there. I still don't know what I'm going to do, and I'm hoping that this summer, and then I'm doing an externship in the fall, hopefully that will kind of tell me what I like and what I'm interested in. So I'm still not sure.
I came to law school wanting to do big law litigation. That's changed a little bit. I still definitely want to do big law, but I'm not sure if I maybe want to do transactional now. Turns out I love contracts, and I really love bankruptcy. But I am still along that path. I'm actually a summer associate for a big law firm this summer, Weil, Gotchel & Mange in Dallas. They're a huge international firm. They did the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy, the American Airlines restructuring, all of that. So I'll be there with them in their bankruptcy section this summer. So it's possible.
You didn't ask this question, but everybody in law school should take bankruptcy. I'm a nerd and I love bankruptcy, but you should also take it no matter what area of law you want to do because, and I'm sure Jerry can testify, first of all, full disclosure, it's the hardest class at this law school. It's probably the hardest class I've ever taken. But it literally touches every aspect of law, whether you want to do oil and gas, whether you want to do antiquities, whether you want to do family law, it touches every aspect of law. You should take it.
Yeah, and that's for your second question, because this is going to be recorded and put on the internet for everybody. Maybe we answer that second question at the chili cook-off in sort of a more informal environment. Not censoring, just delaying your answer, because being a good lawyer, right? It's about production and creating a record.
With being interested in oil and gas, what classes did you take to kind of move towards that?
Sure. So have you talked to them about how the 1L schedule is set, Dean Perez?
No.
Okay. So your 1L year, your schedule is set. You don't actually choose any of your classes. The law school chooses them for you, and it's, I think, the same around the country. Like pretty much every 1L, regardless of where you go to law school, takes the same classes your first year. Your second year is the first year that you can choose your classes. So are we still having oil and gas 1 and 2 next year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a different professor.
Okay. So I took after my first year, I clerked for the Chief Justice of the New Mexico Supreme Court, and there I actually had an oil and gas case, And what I found out from that was it's not just important to take oil and gas law, it's really important to take bankruptcy, and it's really important to take other courses that circumstantially may involve oil and gas interest or property, like water law, like property, and any sort of advanced property, like real property finance that you can take. So I've taken oil and gas, bankruptcy, water law, natural resources, and wind energy.
I've heard administrative law.
Administrative, that's a really good point. Yeah, and administrative law, especially in Texas, if you want to practice in Texas, the Railroad Commission is arguably the most powerful agency in the entire state of Texas.
Yeah. And really administrative law is sort of the law of administrative agencies, so things like the Railroad Commission, the EPA, like all these organizations that are in the executive branch that create regulations, not sort of quote-unquote laws like Congress, but regulations and how those things work and how you deal with the corporate.
And you'll learn that agency law operates completely different, really, than anything that's common law. So I would also recommend that you take admin law. Everybody takes admin law regardless of what you're interested in because it touches everything. And I'm on Admin Law Journal, full disclosure. But also, I went and saw Justice Scalia speak, and he also, the two classes that he said that every law student should take were antitrust and agency and admin law.
So she's just trying, everybody just be like Chris. Just do that. Just do everything Chris does. I'm just kidding. Does anybody want to add?
I was just going to add, plus Professor Murphy teaches our admin law course, and he's renowned for admin law, and he's a genius. He is. He will blow your mind, so take him.
I have taken none of those classes, and I don't intend to take any of those classes, but I'm also a freak, and I'm an advanced tax, so to each his own.
Follow-up question from my friend down here. Who are we supposed to avoid in this law school?
No, later. Later. Ask all the other students that are administrative.
Yeah, we'll definitely tell you. Literally, we'll tell you.
Yeah. Because every law, you're going to ask. Every law school has those people. And sometimes it's not just personality. It's like we were talking about earlier, some of the grading curves are a little harder, or a lot of the advice, and you'll get this, there's a big meeting when you start planning your second and third year courses for the 1Ls and stuff. You get into advice like don't take all 4 of these classes in the same semester because they're all hard, or take these 2 together, or don't, stuff like that, because, that really helps.
One thing I will say is that whenever people give you advice about professors, make sure you listen to what they're actually saying, because there's a professor here that almost everyone loves, and I will never take another class from him again, and it's just a personality thing. So you have to consider multiple things when talking about that.
Yeah, because it's personalities, right? Different people have different things. So I'm going to go, and then you.
Hi. I had a question about networking as far as, if you have your sights set on a job, in the Metroplex, DFW, or in the Austin area, what kind of barriers do you find when trying to network outside of the Lubbock area, and how have you been able to overcome those?
Fortunately, Ashley Withers in Career Service and I are BFF because I forced myself on her, and I would go and have a meeting with her twice a week. And they've been able to make a lot of really good connections. I'm doing the externship in Dallas specifically because of that reason, because that's where I want to end up. So you have a lot of options, and a lot of Dallas firms do come on campus to do interviews, so it's not as challenging as you might think.
So you can go anywhere that you want to go. There's literally a judge from West Texas who sits on the bankruptcy court for the Southern District of New York. So having said that, it's literally the effort that you put into it. If you are willing to put a good effort into it and ask for things, like I said, that you be I interviewed with some bankruptcy judges this past summer for post-grad clerkships that I was there's absolutely no way that I should have gotten that interview. I don't know what it was that got me the interview, but I asked. And the worst thing I can tell you is no. So you need to be dedicated to the process of searching. You need to make sure that your resume is super clean, because lawyers are extremely particular people. Have Ashley Withers in Career Services look at it. She's fantastic. And some of my jobs have just been telling somebody I want to do something, and they're like, oh, I know somebody who does that, or I know this, or I know that. And my firm that I'm going to last year, so like I said, I clerked after my networking, go to networking events. That's where I'm leading with this. My summer clerkship, the justice held a retirement party for one of his paralegals, which some of the other summers were I don't know how to say this, but thought they were too good to go to, I guess. And I ended up meeting one of his firm clerks who was a senior hiring partner at my firm. And I got a 2L summer position with them from going to this retirement party for a paralegal. And so you just don't think you're too good for anything, be dedicated to the search, and ask for things that you're not necessarily qualified for.
Yeah, I think that's a great story that just illustrates that, especially in the way the economy is now, it's not just I'm going to sit on my couch and like punch things up on the job board and then apply online and get an OCI and like that, that's not going to cut it, and so you got to do these other things, and a lot of it is hustle, right? And the people that hustle ultimately on average are more successful than the people that don't.
And I don't think that's unique to tech either, sorry.
No,
hustle,
no.
I mean, I have friends at Boston College who say the exact same thing, that you got to hustle.
Yep.
All I was going to add to that is, once again, just use your professors. So one of my professors, Professor Palowick, is really well known in the bankruptcy world. And I let him know that I was interested in bankruptcy, and all of a sudden I start getting all these emails from friends of his that are just passing through West Texas that want to meet me. For him, I have met Lisa Laper in the United States Trustee's office. Peter Soglin, who's one of the partners at Weil, Glenn West, who's the managing partner at Weil. And then once you meet these people, stay in contact with them. Send them thank you cards for meeting you. Send them emails. Add them on LinkedIn. Because you know what? Then they'll start inviting you to things. They'll start asking, hey, are you going to be in the Metroplex? We have this judge we want to take you to lunch with. And you just build up your network from there.
Send handwritten thank you cards.
Yes, definitely.
I'll go ahead and say the 12 qualified people. Go ahead and, if you're still in the room, should go ahead and head out. The people that were leaving at 12, the McShanes, and Lauren and the other folks, if you haven't already. Yep. Oh, that's right.
So yesterday someone asked a really good question to the professors of what do you think tech's biggest weakness is, and what do you think the institution is doing to correct it? And I believe one of the answers was that we don't teach Byzantine law. Do you guys agree with that, or do you have a different answer?
It was Professor Camp, so that tells you anything.
Okay.
I can totally see that. I can absolutely see that being a camp.
Right, but what he was getting at is that
And he's great, by the way. Don't be scared by Professor Camp. He's great.
Right. What he was getting at is that we don't have a list of course offerings that's 5 pages long that has really, really specific kind of esoteric course offerings like some of the bigger law schools. I think that's what he was getting at.
No, I don't agree with that.
I do think that the one issue that they need to fix, and I've talked to the academic dean about this, is tech does not offer Indian law, which you're like, well, there's no Indian lands in Texas. That's absolutely true. But if you're going to do anything energy related, which tech is really well known for, all of the places where major energy development is occurring all have Indian lands. And more likely than not, you're going to be dealing with deals on Indian lands. But I think we might be correcting that with Alex Pearl. I think we might have somebody coming to teach Indian law. So I'd say that's the only.
But I think generally, just more generally, what do you think the weaknesses of the school are in general? Like, what would you say the weaknesses are that you've seen that you would say?
I don't think there are any.
Like, besides Lubbock. I'm just kidding.
I think that
Chimmy's is not in the law school.
In the law school?
Yeah, we don't have a
not
money
in the
machine
law
in the law review room. No, I think that what I would consider the biggest weakness is more specified. There's not a whole lot of connections in the Houston area, so if you want to practice in Houston, that's totally something you have to create on your own, network on your own, because there's not a whole lot of on-campus interviews for Houston firms, and there's 3 law schools just in Houston alone, and Baylor's only an hour and a half or 2 hours away. So they have 4 law schools to choose from. So it's harder to get a job in Houston. That's what I would say.
And that's one of the reasons why, we're extending the regional externship
Right.
to Houston. And I know that the one that they've announced is with Fifth Circuit Judge Elrod. But I know they're working on a lot more for that reason. So.
I really can't think of very many. I guess the only one I can think of is maybe to be more on top of the 1Ls about job applications. I was the only person in my friend group who applied on December 1st, which is when you need to apply if you want to do big law. And career services was pretty like, focus on finals, don't worry about applications, you can worry about applications after finals. And it is true that 1L grades do everything. If you don't do good, you're going to have a lot harder time getting big law if that's what you want to do. But I don't know, I think there should have been an email at least like, hey, December 1st, everyone apply. But then again, you can't really, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink. And they had meetings with us, so if people were willfully ignorant, that was their fault.
There's one up here.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
I've had people recommend books like Law School Confidential or Planet Law School. I was wondering if you read any type of books like that, you know, give advice on your first year, and if you found them helpful or just kind of a waste of money.
I'm a TLSer, Top Law School Forum. I scoured the posts about how to do well 1L year before I came into law school, and they both terrified and thrilled me. What I will tell you is you do not have to follow those posts to a T. You just need to find what works for you. But what did help me was reading those and realizing that I really needed to mentally prepare myself to be on top of my game every single day, like 16 hours a day if I wanted to do well. So that they do help. But Top Law School Forum, great posts.
And some of those books, like I can't say I've ever read any of them because they came out after I went to law school, so it was a little too late for me. But just take them with a grain of salt, right? Because A, they're trying to sell books, so they tend to be a little sensationalized and a little sort of cynical about the whole process because usually they're written by people that are not happy about law, the fact that they went to law school and they're lawyers and stuff. So you have to take that with a grain of salt. And they're usually about really specific experiences, like their experience at their particular school. And then they kind of, and I talked to 5 other people, and so then I think it's like this everywhere, and you know, and which is really not the case. I think there really is kind of a gap in the experiences that people at really, really top schools, and then your sort of regional schools that are a little more sort of focused on practice. I think the experiences can be really, really different. But
I think the best way to prepare for your 1L year is, if possible, work in a legal job like the summer before. I was an assistant to a partner at a firm in Houston before I came to law school, and it just exposes you to the language, it exposes you to the process, and if you can start reading cases before actual law school, but I didn't read any books or anything.
I didn't read this before law school. I read it in undergrad, but it's called 1L. I can't remember what the...
Scott Turow.
Yeah, Scott Turow. It's not one of those books that's going to tell you how to do well in law school. It was more just about his experiences at Harvard Law, and he was like the creative writing guy from Stanford. I thought it was a good book. I feel like there are definitely sources out there whose whole job is to scare you and be like, you're going to die 1L year, but you're not going to die. We're all sitting here. And I did buy a book. I didn't use it, but I think it would have been helpful if I did use it. My friend at Boston College who entered the same time I did, I can't remember what it's called, but I'll email it to Dean Perez so that he can give it to you guys. It basically just kind of tells you how to read a case, like how do you spot an issue, how do you spot a holding, like what's the best format for a brief that you write for class. I do think it's not a scare tactic book. It's strictly like a procedural book. I think that would have been helpful if I read that. Because then I looked at it after 1L and I was like, this would have been so helpful. I ran out of time. And also I would say, I don't know if any of you are working right now, but I worked at a little bit of a high-stress job before I came to law school, and I only took 4 days off, which I thought was going to be like between when I ended my job and when I started law school, and I thought that would be fine, and it was for 1L year, but honestly, by the time I got to the finals of 2L year, I was like, I just need a break. Like, I don't care, which is not like me. I was like, I just need a break. So I would say
I took 2 weeks off before starting school.
At least 2 weeks off, I would advise.
Yeah, and I guess there's a lot of questions. So, like, should I read this book about, contracts, or this book, all the supplements and stuff? There's really almost nothing you can do to get a leg up on your first year classes, as substantive, like to learn the law or whatever. Even if you read those books, I'd say probably the rest of the class will be caught up by about the 3rd week because you move so fast. The academic support person at my last school recommended a book called 1,000 Days to the Bar, sort of the number 1,000 Days to the Bar. And it's a paperback. It's a blue book. They sell it on Amazon. It's like $15, and it's kind of the same thing what they were saying. It gives you a context and a framework through which to look at law school. It's not about this is what your student experience is going to be, but it's like, okay, look, you've got, it almost does work out to about 1,000 days from the first day of law school to the bar exam. And it says, okay, this is how you should approach your classes. This is how these are some ways to take notes. This is how you should approach law school exams. This is how you should, and a lot of people found it really helpful because sometimes you can have, especially for folks that go straight through, can look at the first year of law school as their 5th year of undergrad. It's just kind of the same thing. I was just doing it. I was studying. I'm going to study the same way. And for most people, that's not, there has to be an adjustment there. For most people their undergrad habits are not usually going to be quite good enough to do well in law school. It can be a good just kind of wake-up call, refresher to be like, oh, okay, no, I should change this or whatever. So, that's just something, like I said, it's not expensive if you want to look it up. That was something that my former school recommended.
Spend your summer reading for pleasure because you're not going to have an opportunity to do that once you start law school. Get like every single magazine on the shelf and any book you've ever wanted to read.
No, really.
And read it by the pool.
Is it just a personal preference whether you take notes by hand or a computer, or are there classes where it's a better idea to take a computer?
I started taking notes by hand just because I think that my brain processes better that way, but a lot of times classes move too fast to be able to do that. There are some classes that, like tax, for example, I had to take notes by hand because it's a lot of math. It's personal preference, whatever you think works best for you. Some people exclusively take handwritten notes. Most people take computer notes.
Have you talked to them about the Office of Academic Success Programs?
No.
Okay, so there's an office here at the law school that Dr. Jarman heads up. She's kooky and awesome. You should go see. I went to go see her maybe like the 2nd or 3rd week of school, and basically her whole job is to ensure that you are academically successful in law school. She gave me this test, I guess, that they can administer that determines like whether you should kind of handwrite notes or whether you should type notes. And I was right in the middle. Like I could fall either on typing or handwriting. And so there, like Ali said, it was really just a preference thing. For tax, I handwrote my notes. For bankruptcy, I handwrote my notes because there was so much detail that like later I'd be like, oh, I need to go back, add this back in. But then there was, and property is another one of the classes where there was just so much detail that I wanted to add stuff back in. But like for contracts, it was fine that I typed and Civ Pro and stuff like that. And also, if you had, like Professor Camp speaks exceedingly fast. And so I don't think I would have been able to handwrite in that class.
That class is the first one that I actually started using my computer because he moves at the speed of light. So by the time you've like finished writing the question he asks, like he's already on like 2 more. So
You guys, do the people that type, you think your classmates, from what you know, use Word or OneNote, or is there any kind of like particular programs that people tend to use, or do you know at all?
I can barely work Facebook, so I use Word, which is the easiest thing for me. So I haven't really seen any discrepancies between that.
There's just different things. You know.
I'm a visual learner too, so I have if you work on a Mac, there's a program called Diagramics that does things in like process charts and flow charts, and I love flow charts. Some people hate them, like they see them and it makes their head explode. I like them, so some of my classes, especially like civil procedure, when we were talking subject matter jurisdiction, I didn't write any notes for that. I flow charted it. But that was just something, once again, that Dr. Jarman had helped me realize I'm a visual learner.
Yeah, and the Office of Academic Success Programs, it's there for all sorts of stuff. It's for everybody. You can go down there, and she does stuff like learning style testing and that kind of stuff. She can help you figure out, am I an auditory learner? Am I a visual learner? That kind of stuff. She's got a whole bunch of flyers and things on how to write a law school exam, how to take notes, how to brief cases, how to do an outline, how to take a law school multiple choice exam, which is going to be a little different. The big other thing too is their library of supplements. So all those study guides and things that go along with the books that they make a lot of money on, you can check them out from here. You don't have to buy them if you don't want them, which is saves you guys a lot of money. And they've got all different kinds because there's a whole bunch of them. and you can go check them out to see if you do want to buy them, if it's like, this stuff makes sense to you and you get it, or if you're like, this doesn't make sense, I need a different company or a different brand, or if you're just having trouble maybe with just one particular section in a class and that's all you need, you can just go check out the Nutshell or the E&E or whatever it is. So that's a really great resource too. And Jaylee, you wanted to get in?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that. Even if you prefer typing, like I'm lost without my computer, but you need to realistically assess yourself and know if you can be on your computer for 50 minutes without checking Facebook. Because you laugh, but by like the third week, most people are surfing the web in class, and you're going to do better if you pay attention. Even if you think it's stupid or you know what they're talking about, you're going to do a lot better if you actively participate. Even if you're not raising your hand, if they ask a question, like answer it in your head, because it's going to make the exam a lot easier.
And Allie, as a tutor, I mean, do you see people's notes and stuff? And do you see any kind of, because I'm thinking, I remember I would see people that as soon as the professor started talking, all I heard was like constant. I mean, they were transcribing what he was saying. And I'm over here like, I only have 4 lines of notes per day. And this other person had the whole transcript. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot, you're going to do this in first year. Like, am I doing it right? Are they doing it right? Did I screw up? Maybe I should have had more. Try not to do that. But a lot of professors will advise, like, you should not be typing everything I say. You should be listening to what I'm saying, not simply being a passive conduit for my words and then reading it later, because not everything they say is relevant. Could anybody sort of comment on that as far as, like, how should you take notes in class?
Particularly for the class that I'm tutoring now, what's most important to the professor is his language. So you really just need to take down the key words that he's saying. You don't type everything he says, because his brain doesn't function the way everyone else's does. And so if you take down everything he says, you won't understand it. So I spend the majority of my tutoring sessions going through and picking out, okay, this was the keyword from this was the keyword from this, and then helping them figure out what those mean. So you don't need to write down everything that's said. Key questions, you don't need to write down the question. Just write down the main rules and the reasoning behind them. It's a waste of time to sit there and try to transcribe the entire class.
There was a girl who sat behind me in civil procedure. Well, so you guys were introduced to Professor Camp yesterday. There was a girl who sat behind me in civil procedure, and I swear to you, she transcribed the entire class, and her notes were like 600 pages at the end of the semester. Trust me, you won't have time to go through 600 pages. It does nothing for you. You have to I think it probably took me 3 or 4 weeks to actually figure out what was important to a specific professor in each of my classes. But what I also think is important is to get a study group 1 out a year that's not a social group, it's actually a study group, and get people who are going to pull their own weight in that group. I was a lone studier in all of undergrad. I never had a study group. But by having that study group, one of my friends in the study group, she is a really big, way overhead, big picture person. And I'm down in the weeds, and I know every weird exception and every little detail. And so between the two of us, it actually worked out really well, because sometimes I would miss the really big picture of what we were talking about. And other times she'd be like, oh, I didn't even know that was an exception. I didn't even know there was an exception. So that, I think, is really what's most important. And then also you have that opportunity in those study groups to compare your notes.
Also, you should really have the rule, the reasoning. You should have that down in your notes before you go to class, so you shouldn't be transcribing what they say. And it's especially going to hit you hard if you're sitting there writing down every single word they say, and then they ask you a question, and your brain goes, oh no, I was transcribing. I don't even really know what question you asked, much less what my answer would be. So it can throw you off a little bit if you try to do that.
Okay, all right. She's closer. I'll get back to you, I promise.
My question is just piggybacking off of that one. I know that I work better writing notes. I retain it more. But did you feel it got confusing if you did mix your notes at all between typed and written when it came down to studying for finals?
Now, as long as you know what days you typed and what days you wrote, what I do at the end of the semester is I take all of my typed notes and I handwrite an outline, because I know that handwriting works better for me. So there's ways to mix the process so that at the end of it you come out on top.
I never mixed within the same class, I mixed, like, one class was written, one class was typed, just because I don't think that I'm organized, but I don't know that I'm organized enough to.
I'm hyper organized.
To put them all together. So yeah, I didn't do that.
I used a legal pad, so I used to mix for some of my classes where half my notes would be on the legal pad with all my other classes, and then half my notes are on my laptop. But honestly, if you're keeping up with your outline, those notes are going into your outline, and then you're never going to look at them again. So outline every Saturday, put it in your outline, then you're only going to see those notes in outline form. You're never going to have to, like, flip back and remember, now did I take that on laptop? Did I take that in handwritten form? Because it's already going to be in your outline.
Hi, I guess my question is, how often is it not acceptable to miss class, but, you know, if you're sick or you have a doctor's appointment, or, you know, like, how often or how many times throughout the course of the semester? Like, once, twice? Because people get sick.
If you're sick, do not come to class, because I don't want to be sick. Actually, in goes towards class, someone sat next to me and he was like, "I'm sorry if I cough on you." I was like, "Get out of here. No. Don't come to class if you're sick." I am paranoid, so I can say I can count between my last 2 years on one hand the amount of times I've missed class. I had a family emergency last semester, so I did have to miss 2 days, but it's not necessarily how many times you can miss in class, but it's how many times are you willing to miss. Because if you miss one day, that's usually an entire topic that you've missed. So, and it's just up to you of whether you can learn that on your own or talk to someone else. It's up to you.
Do most of the professors have sort of very similar attendance policies, or is there a wide variation?
There is some sort of school-wide attendance policy. Some professors have their own. I know for Professor Camp, if you miss a certain number of days, you can't take the final. But then if you go to 3 tutoring sessions, it makes up 1 absence. So each professor has their own policy. Some professors take it more personally if you miss class than others. I'm in a class like advanced tax. It's not 4 days a week like most of the other classes. It's only 2 days a week, and it's 2 hours at a time. And there's only 8 people in the class. So if you miss a class, it's noticeable. So I won't miss that class.
Or so like camps, how many absences does it take to sort of be in the no final?
I would say, I think, if I have to officially not take the final, I miss 0 days, because that class you can't miss.
If you have Camp for Civ Pro, not to scare you, but if you have Camp for Civ Pro, it's really to your disadvantage if you miss a single day of that class. I mean, now if you're on your deathbed, don't go to that class.
If you're contagious, sit in the back
and
wear a mask.
Yeah. I missed one day of Camp's class, 1L a year, because I was really sick. I had strep throat, and this is true for any professor. You don't have to do this by any means, but when I do miss a class, I try to send them an email to say, you know, "Hi, professor, whatever, I'm sorry I missed your class today. I actually have strep throat." So they're not just thinking, "Oh my God, you just like blew off my class." And it doesn't matter because you don't get the attendance back, but I think it matters from a personal accountability standpoint that a professor is not just thinking that you blew off a class because you had too many Jimmy's margaritas, but because you actually had strep throat.
Yeah, I think the professors, from what I can tell, have been pretty accommodating in the sense, or appreciative of even if you are going to go to class but you're not feeling so hot or you were sick or whatever, sending them an email ahead of time, like, you know, "Professor so-and-so, I was up all last night with bronchitis, blah, blah, I didn't sleep well," so that they know not to call on you, you know, or whatever, and I'm going to be in the back of the class, so that they know. Because, yeah, you can't miss too many classes, both for just policy reasons, but also because you're going to get behind. But it doesn't mean, you know, I guess what's the football analogy? Are you hurt or are you injured?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you have to make that decision for yourself. But I think this is also sort of a professionalism sort of little teaching moment, too, that this is, you're already professionals when you get to law school, and that's part of it. It's not just like not telling your boss, just not showing up for work that day and not telling your boss why you're not at the meeting, but giving them the heads up of why and stuff. And most professors understand that people get sick and family emergencies happen and that kind of stuff. The attendance policies are there to make sure you don't just start skipping class because you don't think you need to go or you find other more interesting things to do. It's to keep you accountable. But they understand life happens and can make sort of accommodations when stuff like that happens. If you ever have anything like sort of super catastrophic, like where you're going to be out for a week or something like that, that's when you would start talking to the student affairs office about, coordinating that with all your professors to make sure they're aware of why you're missing and they don't start, emailing you, why aren't you in class? And you're like, well, I'm an astronaut and I'm on the moon. Or, my parents, the Starks, half of them, are no longer living because they went to a wedding or something.
And also, you didn't ask this question, but I'm going to plug to it. So Allie mentioned how she's a tutor. I think there was only one tutor who I didn't think was very effective my 1L year, and I didn't go to their tutoring sessions, but I also felt like I had a really good handle on the material, and I had a study group who I also thought had a really good handle on the material. But I went to every single one of my tutors' tutoring sessions 1L year, even one that was at 8 a.m. on Friday morning when we didn't have class, because of the reason was those tutors are directly connected to the professor. Like, they're literally in the professor's brain. And so
I had arguments with a professor last semester about his midterm and the questions that were asked because I was trying to fight for my students. So tutors are like a huge advocate for you.
They're huge advocates, and the information that they have, like there's one professor who I did not understand how he presented the information. It just seemed so scatterbrained to me. I went to his tutor, and she was fantastic. I would recommend that you go to all of your tutoring sessions 1L year. Sometimes they're going to be at 8 a.m. on Friday when you otherwise wouldn't have class, but they're extremely worth it. I think you need to go.
It's not something that every school has, by the way. So we've got time for probably about one or two more questions. So if you've been holding those back, now would be the time, or forever hold your peace. Or until next time you send me an email and I answer it.
Hi. Do you find that most professors have like a required seating chart where you have to stay all semester, or do they just have like a list of names that they like pre-decide they're going to pull from that day to call on?
A lot of your first-year professors will require you to sit alphabetical order, and so they'll have a seating chart posted the first day of class. And then most of the other professors, you just sit where you want, and then on the first or second day, you create the seating chart as you go, and that's your seat for the whole year. I know Professor Black, who's my tax professor, he doesn't care where you sit, so you could change every single day, and he wouldn't care. I would say after your first year, though, you can sit where you want as long as you stay in that seat the rest of the semester.
Law students tend to be kind of territorial. Like, there's beef that develops, like, oh, she sat in my seat, that's my seat. Even though she got here first, I moved all her. I've heard people say, no, I moved her laptop and stuff over because she was in my seat. Law students are funny people. But yeah, or some might know, some professors might also say, okay, tomorrow I'm passing the seating chart around. If you have a place you want to be there, because for the first year, it helps them learn your names. If you're not, I'm surprised. I've never heard of a law professor that lets people sit wherever they want every single day. Although I think in practice, probably people don't do that. They kind of, you find the part of the classroom you like or whatever, and you like Sheldon in his seat, and on Big Bang Theory. But yeah, different people. I mean, I don't know who does this here, but I know I've heard of professors because those are two different things. One is a seating chart because like you need to be in place so they can learn your names. The other is how they call on people. I've heard, some will just go down the line. So you kind of get a sense of when it's coming to you, and you don't know when. It could be that class, at the end of that class, or the start of the next class, so you better start reading a little more closely. Sometimes it's alphabetical, and so you kind of know that way too. I've heard professors at other schools do sort of like the deck of cards kind of thing, and there's one person's name on every card, and it's like random, or a bag of like poker chips with names on them. One particularly sadistic one, I thought, because it was real sort of like psyops, military sort of strategy going on. She had the student pick the name, which I thought was real sort of like cunning, because it made the anger, you would focus it on the student who picked your name, not on the professor who picked the name. And I was like, that's diabolical right there.
The worst is when you don't know the answer to a question and you have to call in co-counsel.
The professor says, okay, choose somebody for co-counsel, and you're like,
then you're not only drowning, but you're about to push someone onto the front lines of battle. It's very mean.
Also, maybe don't sit in all-girl rows, because you're going to attract attention and get called on a lot. So spread yourselves out through the classroom.
Is that personal experience? I've never heard that piece of advice.
Yeah, I've had 2 classes where the all-girl rows get called on quite a bit. Well, and there's other professors that you'll kind of learn, one professor in general, if you start to volunteer information, he won't call on you randomly as much. In fact, he'll almost never call on you if you volunteer your information. So you'll learn that, or if you haven't learned it, ask your tutor because you're going to go to all the tutoring sessions. Like what the professor prefers, because this professor in particular, like literally I volunteered the first day, and then like other times because I'm a gunner. You learn what that is too. But then he never called on me. It was all my volunteer.
You controlled the situation because you knew you already had the answer. That's a good way to do it. A couple more? Anything else? There you go. Going once got an option.
He finds any reason. He's like, you're wearing purple.
Understand too, you're the only thing keeping people from lunch, but no pressure.
It's okay.
No
This is
worries.
a quick one. How big did your sections, like that you're split up into, how big do those average being? So like how many kids are you with all the time?
I guess I'll start because I'm a 1L, so I'm in sections right now. I think we started with like 53, and we're probably down to 47 or 48 now. So
We don't know what happened to those other people that got lost.
Yeah. Do what?
So we don't know what happened to them. They're MIA.
Yeah,
You know?
one guy.
We find them in the carols sometimes in the library. They're behind books, like stuff fell on them. And no, I'm just kidding.
The morning of the contracts exam, he posted a Facebook message like, "That's it, guys, I'm out." So
I would say there is probably about 60 in ours. I'm not really sure.
It's basically it's the class divided by 4 for the 1Ls. So our class, if those of you that remember it, an hour ago, the very first question, or when we were in the break, about 2:30. So that divided by 4, it usually is about 50, 55. Then the LP sections are basically thirds of that. So you're like 16, 17, 18, depending on the particulars and stuff. So all your classes. When you get to the second and third year, it's not sections. It depends on the class. Some of the required classes are large enrollment, so you'll be in like the large classroom. There might be 80 or 90 in a class, and then you have seminars, like you were talking about with the tax class, where there's 8 people. So it just kind of depends on the class at that point. So, all right, we'll give everybody a hand for thank you for coming.